Andrew Tate has been dividing the internet with his questionable rhetoric and aggressive character. But what is the impact of such an internet personality? In this episode of IMO, we discuss Andrew Tate and whether or not he should have a platform. I think the vernacular in which he uses to sort of like expound on his thoughts are very like dramatic. They're like very like strong words, very extreme sort of words, right? Which is dangerous because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And if you are not a discerning like listener, then it can get dangerous, right?
He takes a truth and he extrapolates it to an untruth.
Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of In My Opinion. My name is John.
My name is Lester.
And I'm Nicole. Hi!
She's finally back after what, 60-something episodes?
You might be confused. Nicole what? Nicole who? Especially those no YouTube, no visual, no visual.
And Nicole how?
Nicole where, right?
Nicole why?
When?
Nicole where? Why? Yeah.
Yeah, correct. You're right. Nicole why?
Yeah.
Nicole, why not?
She was really the host of Something Private.
Yes.
And recently I saw a LinkedIn post that she did and I was like, hey, I saw your LinkedIn post. I just texted her. I was like, hey, should have you back on the show. So here she is. She's going to be doing 2 episodes with us. So stay tuned for the 2 episodes.
Correct.
But before we go into today's episode, we got social media stuff that we have to plug once again. TikTok, Instagram, Telegram, Twitch, YouTube, all over ThinkSG.
Yes.
And Spotify is IMO.
And you know what? It's been a while since you've heard the both of our voices at the same time.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been a hot minute.
It's been like maybe 2 or 3 weeks that we are together.
It's been straight up 2 weeks. I know because I counted in episodes of the time that you've been missing.
Y'all miss each other or not?
No.
Already.
At least we're consistent. I feel like we see each other so much, right?
Too often already.
That if they disappear for a while, I don't miss them immediately.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
Yeah,
it's like a good space.
Not really also, it's just more like, hey, when you come back, can you just faster or not?
Because you don't want to edit the video in that's the only thing. The only purpose of stuff in his life.
No. But okay, now that we're back together today, we're going to be exploring a topic, right? There's a little bit more interesting because it's about someone who's been making waves on the internet.
Yes.
Right?
He's a very controversial figure. And so most people have been talking about him. And the crazy thing is that he's banned off most social media, but we're still talking about him. He's Andrew Tate. So if anyone wants like a lowdown on Andrew Tate and what's going on, I will leave a little tiny bit biased YouTube video on him down. So just know it's a bit biased.
Okay, just watch this.
Okay, just watch this.
Yeah.
And we'll give you we'll cover a little bit lah. If you want a TLDR, basically he's someone who's very controversial. He's said like a lot of arguably misogynistic things.
Yes.
And because of that, he has been deplatformed by a lot of social media sites like Twitter, Twitch, etc.
Yeah, but I guess it's the also part that a lot of people keep saying is that like he was somebody who was on like he was on reality TV show and he was like a professional boxing champion or something like that.
Yes.
Then rose to like internet fame, had this bunch of like podcasts that went like viral. And then with like the social media and everything, like people recutting his clips started to become very famous and whatever. Basically became like an overnight, I won't say overnight lah, but like gradual success. He's been around for some years.
Yeah.
And then I
Suddenly,
guess his views took him to like infamy lah, basically. And then I think like the radicalization of how radical his views were resulted in him becoming deplatformed.
Yes.
In like the last maybe month.
And he hasn't been very happy about it lah.
Yeah.
He has been talking a lot about it and he's been very unhappy about it. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into whether or not he deserves to be deplatformed or the things he has said.
Yeah.
But I want to get some general thoughts. What do you think?
Yeah.
Nicole, why don't you start?
I see really like
Okay,
I start. Okay. As in my thoughts on, I don't want to give my thoughts on the situation necessarily.
In general,
but I want
as
to
a person.
give my thoughts on Andrew Tate.
Yes.
As a person,
Yes.
I feel that he is this enigma.
Yes.
Right, especially on the internet, because everyone is currently trying to label him as something, but but no one really knows who he really is. So people are trying to say that he's doing this for clout. People are saying that he's really a misogynist. People are saying that like all kinds of things, right? They're saying that like, oh, this is the peak toxic male, all kinds of labels, right? But personally, I feel that he's an enigma because we do not really understand where his views really stand or where his views come from.
Yes.
Right, and that's what makes him a curious specimen for me. Not in so much that I want to dissect his views, but more to understand what drives him to have certain approaches to certain views, which sometimes contain some kind of truth, right? But executed in some of the poorest possible ways
you think of
imaginable.
it, like, it's insane how badly he does some of the things. But okay, we get into that. Nicole,
Yeah,
what's
but
yours?
he's an enigma for me. Right?
I agree.
I would love to like dig deeper
Yeah.
into that. But I think I tried very hard because I'm a big user of social media, right? So for a long time when he was deplatformed and everything, everyone was like talking about him and I saw some of his videos, right? But I think I quite intentionally tried to stay away from conversations around him because I was hearing some very misogynistic things, right? And I was just like, okay, I don't want to like engage in that now. So I would say generally I don't really have a lot of opinions about him, but for the sake of this podcast, I think I went to dig a bit deeper.
I apologize for that. By the way.
It's fine. It's really, really interesting. And I think I intentionally tried to remove myself from the conversation, but like now that I'm back in, it's very interesting. Like I think I was listening to this episode where he was debating with another like live streamer.
Hassan Nabi,
and it was such a good like insightful episode into like his mind, right? He just seems like such a he's a character, like he's a character. I'm just gonna say.
Just say only. Never mind.
I think he's really stupid.
Oh,
Just like his line of logic, and I think there was one part he was talking about how like he's not an emotional person. He's not an emotional person. Like his final message, right? After he got deplatformed.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not an emotional person. But when you see him debating with like Hassan, right?
Yeah.
He was so emotional. He had to like take like a break from it. He had to like compose himself. He just couldn't like follow his line of like argument. Was just getting very provoked by Hassan, you know, which was like.
Hassan was super chill.
Yeah.
He was like almost like John level of like whenever you hear stupid comments, right? John will be like incredibly more like I guess almost analytical. Then he will like explain. He was explaining to like Andrew like very very systematically why his logic is flawed.
Yeah.
Andrew was not taking it well.
Yeah.
That specific video, I'll link it down below if you guys want.
I want to watch. But I think that's generally my view of him. But I don't think it's so much like him that we want to discuss, right? But I suppose like the effects that his content or like his fame,
his impact
resonates with the rest of the world, right?
Yeah, and the fact that like there are people who come together in support of what he says is where I want to discuss the most about, because it makes me wonder.
100%.
Yeah.
For me, it's the same. I feel like I said this during dinner. Every once in a while, he'll become like vulnerable. I don't know whether is it like calculated or whether it's true or not. But every once in a while, he'll talk about like his parents, his childhood, about him being poor, about him being homeless, how he felt and everything. Every once in a while, he will talk about that, and that's where I feel like once in a very long time, I feel like he's a human. And every other time, I feel like he's not just playing a character, but I feel like his opinions are rooted in something that like I cannot understand, I cannot see. And to me, all I want to do is like try to, at least to a certain extent, try to understand what he's trying to do. For example, like the badge lady, my first instinct is not like why you don't want to just wear your goddamn mask. My first impression is why I want to know why you so averse to wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I think that's the same feeling I have with Andrew. It's like, I don't agree with pretty much 90% of the thing you said. Every once in a while, he'll say something like kind of wise, but like every 90-95% of the things he said, I don't agree with. And I want to know how he got to that point.
Yeah.
I think that's my personal opinion. But I don't want to go into like the specific things that he has said or like the impacts of the things that he has done. You have a whole bunch of notes, Nicole.
I do, but I wanted to make a remark also that, and I think this is something that somebody on the chat said just now. They were like, why are we even talking about like Andrew Tate, right? Which is I 100% agree, and it's why I wanted to remove myself from the conversation in the first place, right? Because I don't necessarily see the reason for like like bringing him back into the spotlight and then like digging into like why he thinks in a certain way, because it's like then you're just creating more noise. One person's like, who's Andrew Tate? Andrew Tate? You know what I mean? So it's just creating like a giving him more attention that he already needs, which is like really unnecessary.
It's the paradox of social media.
But it's also I mean, the reason why I feel like it's still important to talk about it, because like he's all over TikTok, right? At the end of the day, you're gonna go through it, right? Or pass by it. I think it's important to understand, like, I guess the context behind what he's saying, and who he is as a person, and you know, because of that, you are able to make better decisions or gain better inferences from what he said, Or like,
so I'm curious. Okay, so I think, and I will caveat by saying that before he blew up, right, I didn't know who he was. And
I have no clue.
Okay. So I suppose
I
on the
would
same
say for
starting
the
page, right?
general public in Singapore, or the general internet user in Singapore, he's not one of the most well known before he blew up around his opinions about the topics he discusses these days.
Yeah. But I think one aspect of like his fame is that, which he keeps talking about, right, is that he's a very big supporter of like men's health. He keeps talking about like men's mental health and like
which is insane.
And whatever,
Yeah.
right? And I'm just wondering, did you guys consume any content with
I
regards to
have
that?
not.
That's the one. Yeah. Okay. Honestly. Okay. So I have a few topics. First of all, the misogyny part, which is the women can't drive part, which is don't know why he says this kind of thing. But then there's the mental health part, which I feel like is a bit more grey area. And like coming from someone who studies psychologist, but I still find it super frustrating to hear what he says.
Okay.
Because
do you have a specific?
For example, like he keeps saying like there's no such thing as depression, because if you're depressed, just go and exercise.
Yeah,
and you'll feel better.
I heard something.
You'll feel better. You'll work better than antidepressants. Which, honestly speaking, it is true. If you go and exercise, you will feel less depressed. It is true. It's scientifically proven.
Yep.
If you eat well, if you take care of your body, if you exercise, you will feel less depressed. The problem with depression that I don't think he quite understands is that depression,
It's
the
a
whole point is
chemical
that
imbalance.
not just that, like, but the symptom of depression is that you can't do these things. That's like saying if you have a runny nose, the cure is to not have a runny nose. That's like, what? Like that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yep.
So I don't think he quite understands that. And I understand his whole point of like, he said like, oh, therapy. He was saying that like, if therapy doesn't work, because if you just give you a bunch of drugs and you had therapy for a year, even I will be depressed because you keep brooding about your bad
the same
emotions
problems,
and the same emotions.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to say, to be honest, sometimes quite true, because like the stats show it lah, like antidepressants and therapy, and boring lah, but it works 60 to 70% of the time.
Yeah.
Which is large majority, right? Which is why every time we come on the show and say you got mental health issues, we say go and seek a professional help, go and get therapy, go and see a psychiatrist. Because 60 to 70% of the time it will work. But obviously that's that 30%. And that 30% is probably Andrew lah. Who, if he had gone to therapy, it won't work for him lah. Or for plenty of other people in the world where therapy doesn't work for them. And they'll make them relapse and they probably get worse from therapy. And then that's when we as psychologists and psychiatrists have to find a different way to treat these people. So to a certain extent, what he says is true. But he takes, and I think John and I mentioned this over dinner as well, he takes a truth and he extrapolates it to an untruth and says it in the worst way possible, to a point where like the truth in his words is like so small and people miss that truth. That then I feel like all in my head is like, you could have said that one truth in such a better way, in a way that doesn't like, I guess, spread the wrong message and stuff. Because like, you know, he has said before that like his viewers have come to him and said that like, oh, you really helped me through depression, you really helped me through a tough time. He could be lying about that, but I choose to believe that he's not lah. So the fact that whatever he's saying resonates with some people and he has helped people through depression, as a psychologist, I'm not going to sit here and say that like, what, then your recovery is not valid. Because it is. You recover however the hell you want to recover. So it's valid, sure. You can recover. It can don't work for me, but not for me to say what works for you and what doesn't lah. So evidently what he says works. What he says resonates. Go and exercise, go and like work hard and all that resonates with some people and that help them. But he cannot, I don't think he can sit there and say, because of that, depression is not real. Because of that, therapy is useless. Because of that, antidepressants is a scam. That is, to me, an extrapolation that doesn't make any sense. Even though his base is technically true. I think that's the most frustrating thing to me about him talking about mental health, in my opinion.
I liked, this is so disgusting to say, but I this is something that I do recognize also. I mean, like, there's a huge, recently there's more traction around the men's mental health, right? And like how like most suicides around like these days are, the numbers around men is quite high, right? And I think that like, it's true lah, like women are better at having like communities, you know, like leaning on each other for support. And like, I see that you guys kind of suck at doing that, right? But it's true.
Statistically, yes.
Statistically,
it's
yeah.
true, yeah.
Sure.
So I do think that there is a gap in the content space that needs to be filled. Like you need to, I guess like you guys need someone to look at or look to, right? And unfortunately, he feels like that space. And you're exactly right about the whole, he extrapolates, right? I think the vernacular in which he uses to sort of like expound on his thoughts are very like dramatic. They're like very like strong words, very extreme sort of words, right? Which is then in itself like dangerous because he sounds like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Yeah.
And if you are not a discerning like listener on audience, and I'm not saying that I'm so discerning or like we're so like smart. It's just if you don't have that sort of like literacy to understand or like to sieve through the nuances, right? Then it can get dangerous, right? Because you're just like, yes, like this extreme view, which he probably I would think that he consciously has used certain words, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
For like
Of course.
views and stuff, right?
Definitely, yeah.
If you take that as the extreme truth, then it's scary lah. Like
It's
it
damn scary.
becomes very like,
It's
polarized.
It's what a lot of actually in history, this kind of idolization, right, happens throughout history with a lot of tyrants, right? So when people do this kind of role model behavior or whatever, right, they are either very intelligent or they're just very opinionated. So like for example, right, like I draw you to one of history's great dictators, which is Adolf Hitler.
Yeah.
Right? So
Of
how
course,
he
yeah,
no, but really, how did he
Tough.
come to become the German Chancellor? Right? He did it by saying things that people thought but didn't dare to say.
Yeah.
And as a result, he became a role model and an idol.
Yep.
So I would say Andrew Tate is doing a similar thing. So there
Not
are
saying where he said Adolf Hitler, but yes,
no,
totally.
yeah, he's doing he's applying a similar topic, a similar a similar approach, whether intentional or not, right?
Yes.
So what happens is that he's saying things that some people think, but they don't dare to say,
Yeah.
and as a result, people form an idea in his head that he is a role model. They will always, how people will say, "I want to be like blank." Right? That's a role model statement, right? I want to be like blank. But nobody really ever becomes close to whoever this like is, because this person is a person and they're flawed and they're multifaceted.
Yeah.
But what Andrew Tate does is that when he says all these dehumanizing topics about where he dehumanizes himself, but in an elevating kind of way, people will be like, damn, there's something about Andrew Tate that I need to follow.
Correct.
But then the other side of it will be people like, what the heck? This Andrew Tate is fucked up. Because suddenly he's no longer who he is whatever he has just said. And therein lies the difficulty to understand him fully. Right? Because is he really someone who is a misogynist? I don't think anybody is that single, that singular, that two-dimensional. Right? Is he saying these kind of things for clout? Right? Potentially yes. Because you did mention, because we know his history, he's a reality TV star. He's into showmanship.
That's
he
true.
does show fights to make sure that he keeps his name up, that he's into showbiz.
Yeah.
So this is one very dark route that we can explore his character. But what I think is the most dangerous here is that people are actually absorbing what he's saying.
And taking it as truth. I think
And
that's the
taking
problem.
it as truth. So much so that an even darker headcanon, okay? If he initially did it for clout, what if now he's continuing it because he feels he's in too deep?
Or like he actually starts to
Or he
believe
starts
it.
to internalize it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So that's where it gets complicated for me to understand, because this man has insightful things to say, but he also employs, whether consciously or not, a very a strategy that a lot of tyrants do that gathers a hateful crowd, whether by coincidence or not. You see, people can definitely gain. You see, like you can definitely gain benefits from someone who is nurturing, right?
Yeah.
Mental health benefits from someone who is nurturing, but you can also gain mental health benefits from someone who is fanatical. And these
Yeah.
two are very different things.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, even though both of them can help people improve their mental state.
Yeah, I think it's scary because he, as what I said, like he's very confident.
Yeah.
He's very charismatic, right? And whatever he says, even I find myself sometimes just accepting whatever he says as truth. And for example, there's this once he said like, "Oh, men are more likely to suffer from depression as women," which when I heard it, like I was like, as a psychologist, like as someone who studies psychology, I know that's not true. What is true is that men don't report it as much as women.
Yeah.
But it's women suffer from anxiety and depression more than men. It's just the stats.
The nuances he
Yeah,
didn't.
correct.
Yeah.
So, but even as I heard it and I know this truth, I heard it and I was like, oh my god, maybe yeah. Yeah, I went to check. I doubted myself. I went to check.
Correct.
And to me, it's like if you had no idea, you never seen this step before, you have never learned this step before, you're just gonna take it as like, yeah, that's true. Men suffer more depression than women, and you're just gonna take it at face value, and then you're gonna move on with your lives.
Yeah.
And that's the scary part to me.
Because the general knee-jerk reaction from everyone in the general public on the internet is a very first item that appears on Google approach. So when someone says something that either confirms a bias that you had or like helps reinforce a point that you initially had no footing, right? Suddenly you're just like, oh my god, my pattern recognition monkey brain says this is the truth. And everything else is wrong now, which is how fake news even propagates in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? So I think he does that, and like what this has come to show is that not only are his ideas more unexpectedly welcome amongst people on the internet.
It's true.
And the second point, which also I think is a little bit more scary, is the impressionable, the percentage of the population on the internet that are impressionable. Because you just need to think about it. If we can always extrapolate based on what people say to a whole bunch of dangerous things, you just need to say a few truths that people resonate with and a few half-truths that people semi-disagree with. Right? But eventually, if you gain enough of their support by telling them enough of the truths that they resonate with, right, it becomes easier for them to accept the half-truths. And then after that, you proceed from there, it becomes easier for them to accept the complete falsehoods. And then after that, it becomes even easier for them to accept the hateful messages. You know who's somebody that does that all the damn time? That has become damn famous and also is in the public sphere. He's Donald Trump.
I was literally just gonna say. And it reminds me of Donald Trump.
You think about it. Donald Trump, right,
Yes.
was someone that managed to get Americans to go and storm their capital there.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
Without doing anything.
Without doing anything, yeah.
Without doing anything. Hear me out. That's where it gets dangerous, you see. So I think what we're experiencing here is not a storm the capital kind of level of
Of course not.
of
Yeah,
movement.
I don't think
But
so.
we're experiencing a shift in understanding and brain space on the internet because of him.
To a certain extent, I don't know whether you guys feel the same way, but like I feel like Andrew Tate's success is like almost like a mirror. It says more about society than Andrew Tate himself. Like.
It does.
There are a lot of these people who really truly believes in what he says.
Yeah.
And
like I said, people improve mental health in two ways. You either nurture them or you rile them up. Right. And I think what Andrew Tate is doing is that you cannot deny that it helps people feel better. But there is good medicine and then there's stimulants, for example. Right? I think he is more a stimulant nature than a nurturing nature. Which are very, very different results. But even though you both get the person to feel better, but doesn't mean the person ends up in a better place when it comes to their thoughts.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, and their personality, which is what we want to shape ideally.
Have you guys seen, like, I suppose because we all didn't consume him before coming on this episode, right? So
Consume him. Sounds weird.
Consume his content.
but have you heard of, I guess, like peers or like younger audiences who have?
No,
I've
actually,
seen people argue in the comment section in favor of him.
Okay.
I've seen
Like
people
locally or like?
Yeah, is it a local thing?
I'm unsure because in comment section sometimes you can't tell where they're from.
Yep.
But I've seen people make arguments, very emotional arguments, on both sides of the issue, which is another thing I also don't really agree with.
Yeah.
Being divisive, right?
Yeah.
Picking sides. But that's another topic for another time. But I've seen the way people argue, and it's very if you're able to take a step back and view, you're able to see that both sides, right, are just very riled up.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether he's live talking or not, or it's just a recording. And that's where it gets a little bit disturbing. Because they just riled up over all kinds of reasons, man. Like one video can talk about multiple reasons, Then there'll be different threads sometimes of people like saying like, wow. Like for example, you know what's the most common comment on any Andrew Tate video? I think it's a meme really.
What's it?
It's a common Tate W.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen these three words?
No.
Common Tate W.
What does it mean?
So it's basically it's supporters
Okay.
will say that Tate is Andrew Tate and it's a common win. So it's a common Tate win.
Oh, so it's like, you
Yeah,
made a
agree
good
lah.
point.
Yeah.
Basically. So it's become a big thing because usually that will have a big thread underneath of people like, what I say, oh my God, I will never support this, which is a lot of times the comments are very absolute.
Yep.
Right? They're just saying like, I will never support somebody like this.
Yep.
Right? Then I'll be like, what do you mean? Who is somebody like this? Right?
Yeah,
In my
yeah,
head.
yeah.
And then they'll be like, look, we found the feminist or something. Like, what do you mean? What's wrong with being a feminist? You know?
Yeah.
That's where it started to devolve because it made me start to realize that what Andrew Tate brings out that is tricky, right, is a lack of critical thinking by appealing to people's emotional sides.
Are you worried about it, Nicole?
No, I was just gonna say that it's very interesting because I do think that he is a character that plays very much into, he's American British, right? Like he was born in America, studied in like UK. He plays into that very like left-right divide. But I do think as Singaporeans, I would consider us quite like level-headed individuals. And I do think that
I think we're detached and less political.
Correct. And we do have the ability to sort of like remove ourselves from the situation and evaluate it a bit more clearly. But what I do find interesting is that because of all the noise, right, around like Andrew Tate, and then there are some say news platforms or like sites that have brought up some of his that are doing exactly what we're doing now, right? It's like, why is Andrew Tate problematic? What do you all think? So it's interesting because I think they highlight certain anecdotes that he has previously put forth, and I think one of the ones that I was watching, they said that I think his comment was about how basically like if women put themselves in situations in which
I saw that one.
Like the don't teach men to rape one.
Yes, correct.
Don't teach men not to rape.
Correct. So if they put themselves into dangerous situations, right? Like let's say they wear like something slightly more revealing. Then if they end up being in trouble, like getting sexually harassed, right? Then that's on them. Like they have like some responsibility to bear, which is so interesting because I mean this whole conversation around like sexual assault, right, has been debunked many times, right? I mean it's a whole victim blaming issue. It's a whole like how the society, where the society view like men and women, you know, where are our places in society and stuff like that. And it's interesting because then what's interesting to me is that when I see them debating these things, right, they give light to some of that his arguments. They're like, actually, like maybe he has a point that like if you know a girl wears like a very V-neck like cut and then she goes into a club, she puts herself in that situation, right? It's shocking to me because how can it be that we're still having this conversation?
Until now, right? It's 2022 already. We've been talking about this for too damn long.
Correct. Clearly, there's something wrong with like the structure of our society. Therefore, it's this way, right?
I agree.
There are so many instances in which like women are all victims, /survivors, right, are completely like well dressed, and yet in broad daylight they can, you know, get harassed on the streets and stuff like that. So it's just shocking to me. I'm just
I did see an excerpt from that episode particularly, and I do want to say that his logical conclusion. I want to say his logical conclusion is not wrong. Right? You think about it, because when you follow something a topic from the start to his logical conclusion, it's not wrong. But the way he delivers it, right, is one that is very absolute in the eyes of our society.
Correct.
So I want to offer this conversation to help our audience understand it better. So if let's say he says that, if you're wearing revealing and then you go out into the club and then you get molested, right? In our current society, right? Do you think that there is a societal problem first? Yes, right? That resulted in
the sexual harassment. Like, I mean,
okay,
sure.
The issue is if the consensus with the audience is that the woman has a responsibility to bear for that, or the victim has a responsibility to bear for the harm that was done onto her, right? That's clearly an issue, lah. Because I mean,
I'm about to say something really controversial.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think given the current state of society, okay, I do completely agree that we need to improve society so that people can do what they want, be who they are, wear whatever they wear, and be safe.
I know what you're going to say, but the reality is that society.
But the reality is that in our current stage of society, okay, we are not able to achieve that yet.
Haven't we come to this conclusion?
No, and that is the harsh truth. So I don't want to say, which I can say with 100% confidence that this is something I believe in. I don't want to say that the victim was responsible.
Exactly.
But if someone were to ask me, right, whether the victim was responsible, right, I cannot just say no. because I am uncertain. Because we are in a stage of our society where things are very dangerous. Dangerous in a thought sense, because we're not at the point where we want to be, but at the same time we also do not. We are still evolving in our understanding to not victim shame. So this is where it gets tough, because if you are uncertain, like this is a point of uncertainty for me lah. I don't want to say for you, but for me it's a point of uncertainty. So when someone like Andrew Tate comes in to say that like there's a responsibility, right? It drives uncertain people who are not comfortable with uncertainty to be like, you know what, he's right. You know?
Shouldn't we all be responsible for how we behave?
They were
in
being
public,
stupid, right? They were being stupid. Because especially he gave, I don't know if you recall this, but he gave an example before that. He carries $1 million in cash and he walks through a poor neighborhood. I expect like the police will be like, well, ask me what were you expecting, you know, all that kind of thing. He says this, and people are like, oh my God, he's right. Even though I'm very glad that I have the perspective to be like, that's not completely right. You can't make that statement true just because there is a anecdote that follows the same logical conclusion.
Correct.
So that's where it gets tough.
Yeah, correct. You can't say, I think first of all, you can't say absolutely that will happen first.
Absolutely not.
It's apples and oranges sort of situation.
Exactly.
And I think this is exactly what, and I think you will agree with me, right? This is exactly what victim blaming is. It's focusing the spotlight on the individual to bear responsibility for everything that happens to them. Then why are you not focusing the spotlight on the person who's carrying out the action and be like, maybe you don't behave this way, or you don't go out with the thought that like whoever who dresses this way is blah 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 blah, right? I agree with you that we need to all take care of ourselves and look out for ourselves. But
responsible is not the right way.
Responsible is not the right word.
That's what I'm trying to get at. I hope you all understand where I'm coming from. But the fact is that we can have this conversation for so damn long. It just goes to show that this topic is unresolved.
Yeah.
Okay. There are so many uncertainties, and that is the entire reason, right? Narratives like Andrew Tate's become problematic.
Yeah.
Because it forces people to have a very skewed view about something that is uncertain, and I hate to say this, it will remain uncertain for a while. Yeah. Because we cannot strictly define it, because what we expect versus what society is not matching yet.
And I think it's to me the word responsible also helps shed light into like, I guess, the problem with, or rather the dangers of like not just Andrew Tate, but like a lot of even podcasts, outside podcasts, or even like maybe even how we have unintentionally done this before. But like I feel like using words like responsible, using words of should, like you should have done this, could have done this, all this are very like dangerous. It removes a lot of nuance. Yeah, it removes a lot of nuance, very dangerous words to use. Yeah. And I don't know, man, like the whole, like for example, the whole they are responsible for their own behavior, or like partly responsible for whatever, right? We have gone through this whole topic before. Yeah, I mean,
so it's frustrating, right? Because it seems like we're sitting here talking about the same thing.
The same goddamn thing. I've said
times.
And it's tough.
But the reality is that with the new age of like social media, which has been said a million times, there are new audiences that come on the platform. Yeah. And if this is the first thing they see, then this conversation needs to be thrown back into the same spotlight, right? Exactly. And I just want to then kind of contextualize it a bit to Singapore, right? I think recently there's been a conversation, because I'm on TikTok a lot, a conversation about how...
What, Gen Z?
About corn.
Gen Z. About corn. Okay, a bit old, John. It's over already.
Whoa, I'm sorry. I was just trying to be relevant.
Yeah, but so the conversation is about... people are talking about the same thing again. Like if let's say me, I have a boyfriend, then if he likes this girl's photo on Instagram but she's in a bikini, is it my boyfriend's fault or is it the girl's fault for posting a lot of like bikini photos? You know, this kind of conversation, it just keeps happening. And it's like, is the girl responsible because she's attracting all this like unwanted attention? Then it's her fault for posting her bikini photos, right? I'm like...
Yeah, I feel like we have been talking about this since the dawn of ages.
I know. It's 2022. Firstly, you can do whatever you want on social media, whatever makes you feel confident. The problem is the male gaze. Okay, so
I think it's like I don't know. Like I think like a lot of this. Another frustration I have with Andrew Tate personally is I think he's not as open to like contrary opinions as I think he makes himself out to be lah. Yeah. Because he portrays himself as someone who's like very open-minded. Yeah. And I think to a certain extent he probably is lah, right? Like not open-minded
Give him a lot of
ideals.
benefit of doubt.
I like to give people a benefit of doubt.
Yeah.
Psychologist.
I think he's less open-minded than he claims to be.
Yeah, I
yes,
also
correct.
think so.
Yeah, I think he's less open-minded than he claims to be.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious when he debates with people like SQC, like Hassan Abi and all these people who try to convince him that whatever he's saying and doing is, first of all, fucking weird. Second of all, somewhat misogynistic or very misogynistic at least. And third, like just can be very hurtful. We can help a whole bunch of people. But you're also hurting at the expense of a whole other bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I think every time they try to tell him that, he always sticks to his own opinions, and he doesn't seem to leave room to have his opinions to gain
Be
nuance
challenged.
or be challenged.
Yeah.
I think as someone who portrays himself as for example, like whenever he says something controversial, every time he will say like he'll implore people to hear him out and listen to him and think about it and all that. As someone who is trying to convince like the masses of his opinion and wanting the masses to be open-minded, I feel like the least he can do is be open-minded himself lah. And I don't think he's showing that lah. I think there's another frustration that I have with him is that he's obviously a smart guy, right? I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he's a smart guy.
She just said that.
He's dumb. I think he's a smart guy. I think
That's your opinion.
I think he understands logic.
He does.
Sometimes.
He has
But
pattern recognition, basic pattern recognition.
If you tell him 1, 2, 3, he knows next one is 4.
The square goes in the square hole.
And then the triangle also goes to the square hole.
You know, okay, good.
The circle
Pretty sad.
also square hole.
Yeah.
The arches square hole. But I think I don't think he's dumb. I think he has a certain level of IQ. And I think the frustrating thing is that I think the only reason why he's not able to listen to this logic is because he doesn't want to.
And it's because
He's
a
stubborn.
narcissist. That's my conclusion.
Okay.
Same like Donald Trump, narcissistic personality disorder.
But I have to say that we have to be like in this kind of conversation. We also have to be careful, right? Not to become what we are trying to compete against, which is someone who is very absolute or. I am a centrist, or I strive to be as centrist as possible with all my thoughts, because I think you must explore things from both sides and nothing is ever absolute. So he does exhibit behavior that is of a narcissist, of a megalomaniac narcissist. A lot of the politicians in the spotlight do the same thing. But I think he is more multifaceted than that. And that's where it gets problematic, because we do not know whether at the heart of it there is a dissonance, or is he really all in on this? And that's where it becomes difficult, because if he's all in on this, right, it almost seems to suggest that he is beyond hope.
Okay, but to a certain extent, I feel like it doesn't matter.
Really? I think it does. Because if you are able to view this in a more centrist way, you rehumanize him again.
Okay. So I think from a perspective of like wanting to listen to him and like hear him out and like almost, I won't say rehabilitate, not the right word to use, but like try to accept him and try to integrate him into like society and have him as a proper bookmark in societal like culture and society and stuff. Yes, I think it's important to understand where he's coming from, try to relate to him, and from there try to maybe dial down his opinions.
Right.
But if you're coming from a perspective of like how much harm he has been doing to society, quite honestly, these kids don't give a shit lah. Why he's saying what he's saying and like what's his context. Because only we give a shit because we are genuinely curious people who wants to know why he takes the way he takes. It's just like, I want to know why scammers scam. Right? Not that I want to scam. I just want to know why the fuck they do it. Not that, but it doesn't make them doing scamming less scummy. Yeah, you get what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's my opinion.
I agree with you, because I think that like, and this is just an assumption also, right? But I think by the time we have sat down and like dissected why he does a certain thing,
His
give him
era is
chance.
over.
Yeah, everybody's like radicalized already, right? They were like,
the capital has been stormed.
correct. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly that.
Hey,
It's
move on to
exactly
John Lim, which is worse.
Me? I think if hear me out. Here's the interesting thing that I believe in. I feel that like if the world, right, could unify in one train of thought, there will be no more problems. But the problem is we are a world of diversity trying to exist in an idea of unity.
Okay, so the next question I have for you guys is, should Andrew Tate have been deplatformed? Should Andrew Tate have been banned on Twitter or on Instagram or Twitch or whatever? Because that's what I said. right? Like what makes us great and bad at the same time is that we are diverse people.
Correct.
We have diverse opinions, which is what makes humanity thrive, but at the same time, half of our problems.
Yes.
So should he have been silenced
I
in that sense?
think, hear me out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Why? Because he's not on an open platform. He's on a platform owned by a corporation. Corporation has rules. Rules are followed quite strictly because they are a business. Things are dangerous enough for the business, he will be deplatformed. If there is such thing as a Hong Lim Park on the internet, by all means, right? He can exist in the blockchain, for example, right? That is decentralized. He gets to be on the blockchain spreading his message if he wants to using blockchain technology.
To be fair, he has been spreading his message, not like he has
By
been,
all means, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I say yes. Why? Because he's on private platforms.
Okay. Nicole, what about you?
That's reasonable. I would say I don't have a necessarily logical. Yeah, I would say that my yes, he should be deplatformed is quite an emotional one.
Okay.
And I think I take this stance also because I hear John in the like big tech platforms have a lot of power. They should remove and whatever.
You brought up a bit of this during dinner.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's a whole like drama, right? Like even though like big tech platforms have so much power, they've done like deplatforming of like other like celebrities and like politicians and whatever. But obviously, and this is something that Andrew Tate says himself, right? Like that there still exists all these like bots and supporters in favor of him, right? So like truly his cult, whether he's deplatformed or not, right, doesn't remove that his cult following, right? And could it be that also that now you've kind of triggered like, oh yeah, like the person that I admire is deplatform, I will now put even more effort to support him on his website, and then he builds a even bigger army, right? So it's like, it's good, but also like, I suppose what are the repercussions of that, right? And I don't know which one is the better of two evils, but my immediate reaction is like, I think it's good
to just deplatform.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know also,
Yeah.
I asked that question hoping that after I hear you guys, then I can get
you can
inspired.
piggyback on the answer,
just like,
right?
I agree with you,
No way.
but over time I realized that, I don't know because I'm also torn. Okay, what I'm more torn about is that like, I'm over here trying to preach that diverse opinions, as much as I don't agree with them, you should be able to see it, and therefore, but at the same time, you have to be open to my diverse opinions, just as I am open to yours. And I feel like deplatforming him and shutting him out is only just going to like make the divide bigger. And I think that's where my reservation is at.
No, I agree. I mean, if you look at like celebrated politicians who have been deplatformed, right?
Yeah.
Is there? I mean, did Donald Trump like have less followers because
no way.
he was deplatformed? I
If
don't
anything,
think so,
maybe
right?
more,
Yeah, exactly. Then
so
you're
I think
right. You're right.
It's tough lah, but I'm not sure, man. But at the same time, he has hurt a bunch of people.
I think he will be deplatformed on platforms where rules are a little bit stricter. I'm pretty sure in the Sammy Boy or the Hardware Zone equivalent elsewhere, he's still online and rampant there. And that's my take on it. You see?
Yeah.
You do not have you are deplatformed for whatever reason, right? Donald Trump also got a deplatform on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
But that's because they have a specific set of rules that you have to follow. So technically, no freedoms were infringed on the internet, but freedoms were infringed on platforms that enforce their own platform rules. It's like saying I'm in your house. If I slap you, will I be chased out by your family? Of course. Of course I will.
Fair enough.
Right? That's in your house. If I slap you on the road, you chase me out to where?
Yeah.
Right? So that's where it becomes tricky.
Yeah.
So I do agree that that's where he has been throwing a lot of mud in different directions, forcing the platforms to act upon him. But am I saying that is an indicator that his narrative is 100% dangerous? I'm not going to say 100% yes, right? Because there are things that he shares that force people to think, but it is very difficult when you go in without critical thinking, right? To process that information and drop the noise. You will process the whole thing.
Do you have any do you have any other points to bring out about the misogyny part, or do you want to? Do you feel like you have said enough?
I didn't necessarily want to harp on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess like for the purposes of the show, we can talk about it.
Sure.
I think one interesting one that he said, and it was the first few sort of clips of his that I've heard from TikTok.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think he said that girls who are under the age of 25 or 24 are not dateable. Also, like, so the age range that you should be dating is like 18 to 24, right? And that's because...
What?
Yeah, and that's because like they are the most like... They haven't been tainted by men. And they are like the most like innocent. And they haven't been like ruined by the world. So like 25 onwards, they're like a headache because like... Yeah, like they already have all these experiences. Yeah, and they expect like men to whatever, which is... It's so interesting. I mean, it fits to a larger issue around society, right? And I say this also because like I'm 26, right? And I look at some of the men that I date who are like 10 years older, or like even friends who...
Interesting.
As we age, you still set your like Tinder dating range to like 21 to like 30. You know, for instance, the limit does never changes. So it's like, yeah, lor. I mean, to me, it points to the fact that like clearly like women who are younger, men see them in a certain way. I don't necessarily think that's like helpful, but I wouldn't say like it's their fault also, right? I mean, it's a function of like just how society views men, how society views women, which I find interesting lah. And I think that, I mean, of course, it's dangerous in its own way, right? That like if let's say everybody who listens to Andrew Tate is like, yeah, like 25-year-old, like we are old cows and we undateable. I mean, fine, whatever, don't date me, I don't care. But like, yeah, lor, if you continue to, how do I put it, like, put these girls in the age group on a pedestal, yeah, lor, I think, I mean, you can see for yourself, right? It creates a host of problems, right?
It's true lah. I totally agree with you. But I think that like that's where Andrew Tate becomes tricky and also dangerous because he can turn something that probably started out as an innocent banter thing, right? either a preference or an observation that he has on a personal level to something that is applicable to people because he may not know this, but like there are people who know this but don't say it. Right? Who feel this but they don't say it. Who feel like they like these women in their age group, for example. And it becomes tricky because is it untrue to say that as people, I don't even need to say women, man, as people get older, the more jaded they get by life. So why is this important, right? But
it's jaded and also you gain a lot more perspective, maturity,
No, but what I'm trying to say about him is that he targets this one thing.
Yeah.
And then he brings it into his point by saying women are like this when, to be fair, everyone's like this. And then they're just like, yeah, and that's why ABC. Then people are like, yeah. Which is, come on. We got to bring critical thinking back into this. Because when he says something like this, if your first instinct is like, holy shit, that's true. Right? But then there's no, but then after that, right? Then, right, you need to get off the internet and think about things more deeply. Because it can be true. Like, no one says it's not true, right? It can be like, yeah, it's true that I prefer dating girls within this age range, for example. But then, no reason is because Andrew Tate say, no, it can't be like that, right? It can't be like that. And that's where it becomes dangerous. Because if you have your own reasons for like, actually, I agree with him, I did this age range. What's the reason? Oh, my reason is this. Then there is some thought that goes into what you're saying and you're not indoctrinated by what Andrew Tate says, which eliminates majority of the danger because there's a lot of other dangerous things that come with what he say. So I don't disagree that people like that exist, right? I exclusively date in this age range, for example. Which I think is a product of, you know what, you are you. I will not be calling you bad or good, but you are you, right? But if you go on to the internet and start preaching and saying that all other age groups are less, right? That's where it becomes untrue and not good lah. Because not only are you affecting the people of that age group or of those groups that you oust, you also potentially bring in people or shape people's thinking about those groups in a negative way, which is unnecessary.
I think the other thing about it is also that he can be quite reductive in the way he draws conclusions from like whatever he says, right? So I think like why he says like the 18 to 24, for instance, is because like they, to him, in his experience, they haven't dated much, they haven't gone through like many men. Yeah, like heartbreak,
Right.
correct. That's exactly what it is, right? And the same way, then he also says like, yeah, women have like a certain function in life, they have like certain roles to play. Men have certain roles to play. And then, men and women are biologically different, which is exactly what you say, right? It's like, there is truth to that. There's no doubt.
Like let's put it out there to the internet now that if you say men and women are biologically different, and someone says no, then what person you see doctor?
No, it's true. I mean, and these differences should be celebrated.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, take us as we are, right?
Yeah.
And it's exactly that. It becomes so reductive. It's like, we are different, therefore this, therefore that, which is like...
I think he always skips a few steps between his logical processes.
Yeah.
And like... And as I said at the start of the podcast, his like base argument is like always at least somewhat like within reason. Not always sometimes within reason. But it's always his like therefore this, therefore this. Then the more he says therefore, right, the more problematic
his
it gets.
hypothesis, right?
Yeah, and then it gets worse and worse every time he says therefore. And I think that's... But the thing is that if you're listening, all you're going to hear is therefore, then you're like, oh, that small step, not that bad, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the other small step, not that bad, makes sense. But you're never going to look back from the third therefore down to the base, right? You're like, wait, doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, that doesn't link up at all.
I want to bring out my phone because I want to bring out this part that I wrote. So in his final message video, right, he was like, basically he was trying to debunk the myths about him being a misogynist, right? And his logic or like his reasoning for that is because he said that, firstly, he said his justification is, I'm a good guy because not a single female has come forward to say I've raped or hurt her. That's his logic of reasoning. Then he goes on to substantiate by saying, I've donated to women's charities, therefore I care and love for women and I care for their safety. The rest of you guys who are out here harming me and saying like nonsense about me, right? None of you have donated to charities, therefore you don't care about women as much as I do. Which is such a...
The therefore is what kills me.
Yeah, it's such a I'm a good guy because I have not attempted to kill anybody. I've not attempted murder.
It's a straw man argument, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? You're exactly right? Then people who... I don't want to say not discerning, but like, it's so easy to be like, oh yeah, he's donating to charities. Oh, he's good.
The steps are not big enough
That's
for you to
the
go
thing.
red flag, but it's big.
Yeah, he takes things to his logical conclusion, but then after that he imposes his ideal upon that.
Yeah.
So like,
and also he talks very fast. So you're like,
he does talk. He do be talking fast.
he's talking damn fast. You're like, okay.
So it's tricky, you see. But I feel that it's a better move to decode him than to just, all right, Andrew Tate, nah. Because I think is there something to be learned from him? Yes. Is there any role model behavior to learn from? Absolutely. Why? Because one of the bigger arguments that I see on the internet surrounding Andrew Tate, defenders, right, of him start to say that there are no strong male role models in the world anymore. But at the same time, there are people who the counter argument will always be, if this is the male role model, I don't want it.
Yeah.
Right? Which I agree on both fronts. Yes. Because these two arguments, they don't realize, these two people on opposite sides, right? They're not mutually exclusive things.
Yeah.
You don't need to be behaving like Andrew Tate to be a strong male role model.
That's true.
Right?
That's
and this is
fair.
where it becomes very complicated to understand. And the only way to reconcile these two facts is if we dissect the individual at the center of it, right, into its component parts enough for us to fit into the right category. And then you realize that, hey, we can do it without this particular individual. And that's why it's dangerous, because when you follow his logical conclusions, you're like, that sounds like role model behavior. And then then suddenly you're like, that sounds like trashy things to say. And then you're like, where does this guy stand, right? So it's very difficult to just draw your conclusion based on what we see on just social media, for example. Because on social media, usually what we're fed is either side of the fence. People who are hardcore supporters or people who be like, this guy's out of control.
Yes.
Right? But although more often than not, what makes the headlines are the stuff he says that's out of control.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, so I guess like if we are talking about this person filling the gap, right? So for you guys, are there good creators that you subscribe to that you feel like is somebody worthy to look up to? Not just like the whole like I'm a strong guy, but like, has good thoughts,
Yeah. I find it a little iffy when you mention about the strong guy thing. Because what does that necessarily mean, right?
Yeah. I'm just giving an example because I mean,
But
It doesn't have
doesn't
to be the
be a strong guy.
stereotypically
I have a few
guy.
answers off the top of my head. So
Okay.
one is a little bit more controversial. The other two are not so controversial.
Oh, God,
and-
three.
wait,
Yeah, what the hell?
I feel like, can I guess?
Yeah, sure.
I
You
don't
wanna
know.
guess? That's it again.
Why you say it?
No, but why don't you say the name that
Nicole,
came
make
out?
up your damn mind.
I was say Joe Rogan.
No,
Oh, thank God.
I'm not a fan of Joe Rogan. But there are three people that I think-
Elon Musk.
Oh no. Elon Musk is someone who is really
You just
smart.
start naming people you hate.
But
I don't hate.
But
I don't
there are three
hate.
people that I really look up to. Okay,
Okay.
so two of them are the Green brothers.
Oh yeah,
John
Green
Green
and
and
Green.
Hank
yeah,
Green.
yeah,
Okay, so they're incredibly smart.
Wait, are they the
and
controversial ones?
No.
Okay.
How is
They're
it?
incredibly smart and
Everyone
humble.
loves them, man.
Same, I also love.
And they are very insightful and careful with the way they approach people.
Yes,
Although,
yes.
I have to say, as a centrist, sometimes they're a little bit too liberal. It's a little bit difficult to sometimes like they form a bit of an echo chamber, even though they try to be nice about it.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
difficult when people come to them with problems from a more conservative standpoint. It becomes difficult for them to advise. So other than that, they're great, right? And they're people of science. We all love people of science. People of science are never too emotional about certain things, right?
Yeah.
They're very emotional about the fact that the daughter pronounced Princess Anna from Frozen as Anna, and then they rage about that a
So
bit.
emotional about the right things because being emotional is not
because
bad
they're
thing.
just dads and they got no time for
You got nothing else to
drama.
do.
The next one is the controversial one. You all know Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
Now,
You know, I was gonna start this podcast by saying that
yeah,
that to me,
I was gonna draw that parallel too. So hear me out. Okay, I know a lot of people are gonna be like, "What the fuck's wrong with him?" Right? Why do you like Jordan?
no.
So Jordan Peterson
No,
is
I don't.
no, but Jordan Peterson is a very
He's
interesting. It's a very interesting character
Jeez,
because he is someone, right, who is highly intelligent with a lot of experience, but also say some of the wackiest shit. While
he
at
do be
the-
saying some crazy
but
shit
while
though.
at the same time, okay, saying some of the most important things humanity has to hear about the human condition. Difficult to stomach things. Okay? Very difficult to stomach things. But once in a while, suddenly he just, he glitches out and then he just says shit. But other times, right?
I don't think it's a
he's-
once in a while thing. Dude.
yeah, but enough
do-
times for him to be labeled as such. When you actually go and watch what he do, look at some of the books and articles that he puts out, right? And you come to realize that there are things there's knowledge to be sussed out from what he has to say. But if you just look at what is presented on the internet, right? He just looks like a woman-hating conversational bully. Right?
We should do another episode on Jordan Peterson. I think he's another very controversial
I think
person.
he's fantastic. Hear me out, okay? You're gonna think I'm crazy, okay?
We don't think you're crazy.
No, but
I
like,
don't think you're crazy.
yeah, but you really have to explore what he's saying to try to expand your horizon, but not take what he says as truth.
You see, then it goes back to the argument that we were talking about right at the start, right?
Exactly.
Which
That's
is-
why I say he's a controversial role model for me because
Yeah, no,
I
that's fair.
read him not to support him.
Yeah.
I read him to understand viewpoints better. You get where I'm going with this?
So you're not taking everything he
Like I
says.
give you an example. What's a controversial thing to own in Singapore? The Little Red Book by Mao.
Yes.
Right?
What's that is controversial?
There are people who read
It's
it
illegal actually.
to
Yeah.
it's
It
illegal.
should not be illegal,
It's
dude.
illegal, but like Mein Kampf
Yeah.
by Adolf
Oh,
Hitler,
yeah.
right?
I heard you completely wrong.
People
dude.
can read it.
So yeah.
I heard you my Kampf.
It's pronounced Mein Kampf,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, I'm so,
So
sorry. I
it's
heard
like
wrongly.
like you can read it to be influenced, right? Or to find truth, which is dangerous. Or you can read it to understand. And
Okay,
I think
I get what you mean.
that's my approach to people like Jordan Peterson. And that's why I
Sure.
find Andrew Tate fascinating. Because I want to understand. Almost like I don't want to say it's in a dangerous, but from a bystander, from behind a glass wall. You understand this specimen so that you can understand that whether it is friend or foe, whether it is dangerous or not, whether it is human or not, whether there are weaknesses or not. But that is the approach I have towards people like Jordan Peterson. And it's completely different from Hank Green and John
Fair
Green.
enough,
It's like,
fair
"Ah!"
And I think
Yeah.
it's great, but then we can only hope that everybody aspires to
I
view
want
it
to
this
say
way,
to
right?
the audience now that if you're ever viewed very opinionated creators like Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate as your role model, I want you to approach and tread lightly. I do not want you to investigate them to the point you become indoctrinated. But I do not want to.
Self-radicalized.
Yeah, but I also do not want you to just shun them and and burn the books in that sense.
I
No,
do want to
that's
say
fair.
that I saw this one clip of Jordan Peterson where he cried and he talked about like his emotions and like how he's doing and everything like
Yeah.
that. And I was like, once again, it's the same thing when Andrew Tate talks about his like vulnerability. I'm like, finally, this person's human. And like, I feel like, okay, Jordan Peterson is a whole other thing. Okay, well, who's your last role model before
That's
I share
it, those
my...
three.
Oh, those
Three,
oh,
ma.
oh, yeah, that's three.
Oh,
Yeah.
two people and
two
one.
people,
Okay,
one.
one
Oh,
controversial
okay,
one,
fine.
yeah.
I was going to say Casey Neistat. I feel like he's the...
Like, I'm a fan.
I think
I
Casey
thought you would
Neistat...
say Joe Rogan because
Nah. I was going to say... Okay, I'll say Casey Neistat because I think he is... If Andrew Tate was less radicalized. Because he does subscribe to the same things, like the hustle culture, work hard for what you want. You like really just go out and like grab the opportunities you want to grab and try to your best to do whatever you want to do and like put your all into it, which is the good things that Andrew Tate try to put out, right? Is he's an athlete, work hard to get what you want. If you don't work hard, nothing's gonna come to you free. And that's the good things that come out of it. I think Casey Neistat embodies that as well. But at the same time, Casey Neistat is vulnerable enough to know that, like, you know, and also open-minded and well-read and well-traveled enough to know that, you know, certain things that Andrew Tate says is probably wrong.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, I feel like he's the good in between. As someone who has going through some bad things, when I hear Casey Neistat go like, you know, just do you, you know, do it so that, you know, a lot of people will hate you, a lot of people will doubt you, but, you know, do it because you just love to and eventually one day you prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Like, all these things are inspiring messages to me. And I think that's what Andrew Tate wants to be as well, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent, to a bunch of people.
I forgot someone else.
Who?
Not controversial, but because they passed away. Right? They
Kobe Bryant?
The
sorry?
Queen.
No. It's Sir Ken Robinson. I don't know if you've heard of him before. He's done a few TED Talks about education. And I study him in so far as I study Jordan Peterson in the way he understands the world. Yeah, that's it. Sir Ken Robinson. Highly recommended that you go check him out.
I like that question because I think maybe these are like better avenues for people
Yeah,
to look
100%,
to. And like, you know, if you, or maybe even fucking Gary Vee, maybe not that bad also. Like,
Who's
you know,
Gary Vee?
the guy that goes like, but
I've won.
not that.
Yeah.
who-
I've been thinking about if there's a woman, not because it's to be a gender
Right,
thing,
right,
but
yeah.
I mean, we've been talking a lot about men, right?
Yeah.
But for life of me, I can't think of anyone yet. So if anybody knows any good women, I suppose like content creators or thinkers,
Yeah.
Right.
feel free to put. But mine is Ezra Klein. He's the ex-editor of Vox Media, and then now
Right.
he has a podcast on New York Times called The Ezra Klein Show. So he does a lot of like,
I wonder where he came out of that.
oh, so ingenious, right?
Who could it be?
How could it?
I wonder who came out of that.
Is it a
idea.
show by Ezra Klein?
No lah. Yeah,
Cannot
but
be.
he does a lot of like big
Held my breath
things.
for a moment.
He does a lot of big thing like topics.
Yeah.
Interviews a lot of like very interesting like doctors, psychologists. He did one on like attention span, which was like really interesting, and how like you having a lousy attention span isn't your fault, like stuff like that lah. So I wouldn't say. Yeah, I guess like he's a bit more unsexy in that way, right? It's like not so controversial, but like just very interesting things that like you wouldn't be thinking about on the day to day. So
Yeah. I think
he's
maybe
done a
these
lot.
are better people to give your time and day to,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Sir Ken Robinson.
Second reason.
I tell you,
R.I.P.
he's it's an inspiration. He got me through a dark time.
Okay, we hear you.
Y'all gotta watch his TED Talk. He's hilarious, effortlessly, without being offensive. And
And
he hits the
You do be watching a lot of TED Talks.
I do. I watch a lot of documentaries, a lot of
That's true.
TED Talks.
Fair enough.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah, I mean, this podcast has been going on for a hot minute, like an hour or something.
Yeah.
Do
Oh
you
my
guys want
God.
any final concluding thoughts?
Yeah.
I thought that was our final concluding thoughts.
Was there our final concluding thoughts?
Is it not?
Do you have any? If you don't have, you just say don't have. Then we will awkwardly end this.
Wow, you
convo.
made me feel so like silly now. Hey, John, go first.
Right.
Taking back off his idea.
I seem to be the generator of ideas. But yeah, final words before we end off. I think it's important as if you want to be a moderate when you approach difficult topics, to try to understand the individuals, not for just their ideas, but who they really are. And you will be able to form your own opinion that is not colored by other people's worldview. And I think that's especially important when we deal with people with extreme views on the internet, which may have some truths that you may resonate with, which is confusing, which results in it being confusing. So what do you do when you encounter this? You break it down, try to try to, instead of applying their logic directly to your life, you try to see what then you can learn about theirs. And that will give you a broader perspective and it's a lot more inspiring to work in that way than just taking what they say as face value and then fighting against the people who disagree.
I want piggyback off John.
Of course.
He's the leader in this trio.
Nicole piggyback Lim. It's a middle name now.
Yeah, I think piggybacking off what he said. Plus, there was this guy who was sharing on TikTok again. He was basically saying that like he always found himself in a very argumentative state with people. But one day his sister, who was like a practicing psychologist, asked him, if you're in an argument with a person or disagreement, right, why don't you ask yourself, what if this person could be right? And then see things from like their perspective. And then, you know, like maybe then you would not be so argumentative, be able to accept views that were a bit more worldly, like different, right? So I don't know, I thought it was great. So
yeah, man.
My 2 cents.
Centrist forever is what I can say.
My final thoughts is, you know,
How you gonna be us?
my final thoughts
He
is
got
that
2 bags to piggyback on.
my final, the more I say final thoughts, just to get my final thoughts, right? Actually, my final thoughts. My final thoughts is that, like, with anyone on the internet, they're probably not all right, including us, right? We're not gonna sit here. I'm not gonna sit here and say that like, I'm 100% right. Not even 70% right. You know, who knows? I don't know how many percent it is, but I'm probably wrong and multiple times in this podcast alone and throughout my whole life as a podcaster. And you know, as much as I say like treat whatever Andrew Tate says with cynicism and like really go and like form your own opinions. Don't take it as gospel or take it as face value. Go and like find out more and like really form your own opinions. Hear ours and form your own opinions as well. And
okay, not bad.
yeah, right.
Not bad.
Quite wise, right? Thank you. But I think, but at the end of the day, you have to be open-minded. At the end of the day, you have to understand that as much as I accepted that sometimes Andrew Tate does have right ideas, just that he extrapolates to bad things, you have to also understand that, you know, not everything that everyone say, it might offend you, but it might not be completely wrong. And you have to take the good things and ignore the bad things. Yeah, and that's what I try to do with Andrew Tate.
Just because it's offensive doesn't mean you shut it out.
Yeah.
It's tough to hear, but just because it's offensive doesn't mean you shut it out.
Unless they're wrong, then shut it out. Unless they're wrong.
Unless they're 100% wrong. You know, I was about to make a joke about if they are flat earther, but you know what? Let's not be mean to people. But yeah, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, as with all topics, whenever we discuss this kind of tough stuff, I encourage you all to engage in an intellectual discussion in the comments below. Do not mudsling because we do not want to be divisive. We spent all these years working on creating a safe space for everyone to discuss. Disagree, but disagree politely, and always go into this kind of conversations with your mind ready to be changed.
No mustang, because mud not nice. Like, a bit difficult to wash
unless
off.
Mud bath, like mud mask.
Actually, mud bath's not bad, right?
This episode very long.
It is very long. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, don't get COVID. See you guys next week. Bye-bye.